What are the best and worst matchups for your quarterbacks and running backs here for fantasy football in week 11? It's time to break it all down right here as we do our rankings and starts and advice for those two positions on this matchup Wednesday of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. I have my picks column up against the spread here for week 11, breaking down all the games in detail and making the calls there on who's going to win. We also have my decider column up, the starts and advice combined with your rankings of the week. So it's a one-stop shop here for your breakdown, and we do it in rapid fire there with quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and defenses. We go a little bit more in depth here on Locked On Fantasy Football. So that's there to check out anytime during the week. Here we're going to, again, focus on quarterbacks and running backs as we always do on a Wednesday. We'll break down the matchups for you, guys that are no-brainer starts, guys that are pretty good starts this week, and guys you want to avoid at those positions as much as possible there. And then we'll get into our DFS report and picks of the week on these positions and all of them on Friday. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's dive right in here to the quarterback rankings here. There's only a few guys here with the bye weeks. We know the bye weeks affect a few pretty good quarterbacks. Geno Smith had been bringing it all season long, so that's a guy we won't have available. Tom Brady had started to heat up before the bye, so both of those teams played in Munich, Germany, so they get the week off here. And we also do not have at our disposal Trevor Lawrence, who's actually been a top 10 quarterback this week. He's bringing it in a lot of games with his running, and the numbers support that he has been a QB1 all year long. So we got to navigate through that, missing a lot of key players this week, as well as Tua Tagovailoa and that Dolphins exciting passing game. So a lot of question marks at quarterback, passing games, wide receiver. We'll get into wide receivers tomorrow there, but definitely you might be digging a little bit deeper to play quarterbacks this week with some key guys off. Now, let's go to the top of the rankings here, and guess who's ascended, folks? He's been the QB1 here over the last 4 weeks. He's had 2 monster games in a row in smash matchups against the Dolphins and Lions at home. Now he's on the road. Actually, he's going home. He's from Kennesaw, Georgia. He played at Georgia before he transferred to Ohio State. Justin Fields on the fast track against the Falcons, but atrocious defense here, giving up points in bunches here to the passing game and the running game. Great matchup for Fields. Again, another can't-miss spot for Fields. He's come through last 2. Stay with the hot hand because he's going to keep delivering here against the Falcons. It will get tough come fantasy football playoff time a little bit for Fields, but he's been tearing through the league. And keep in mind, this run really started with the Patriots of all teams. So he destroyed Bill Belichick's defense, put up big numbers against that tough Cowboys defense. He's kept it rolling the past couple of weeks. There's no reason to believe the Falcons are going to slow down Justin Fields. So he is number 1 on the board. He deserves that. What a year. And he's creeping up on 1,000 yards rushing. That's not going to be a problem. It's going to be, can he get to the Lamar Jackson rushing yards for a quarterback record? I think he's within range if he keeps this up and has another big game as we expect against the Falcons. So he's there, not far behind. He's been the QB1 on the board the whole season long now. He leads the NFL in touchdown passes and passing yardage. Patrick Mahomes, so he's getting it done through the air. He's also run in key spots as well. He gets the Chargers this week. Chiefs have gone completely pass happy for the most part. I know Chargers are vulnerable against the run. But Mahomes is going to keep lining it up. So Fields, Mahomes top the list here. You can put them in any order this week. You probably don't have both of them. Hopefully, if you do, you were able to trade one of them. But yeah, those are the top guys on the list. Lamar Jackson, I also love coming off the bye here at home against the Panthers. They give up a lot to running quarterbacks and scorers. So that is great news for Jackson at home. So he could easily contend with Fields and Mahomes for the top scoring output of the week. Josh Allen, it's been hard to watch with the passing, but he's been getting it done with the running and the touchdowns here of late. He's not pushing the ball downfield the way you expect. He's committing a lot of turnovers to cut into his points a little bit. But watch the snow game, but I think Josh Allen kind of plays to me that he's going to be great in snow because, he played football in Wyoming. I know they didn't play in these conditions very often because of the nature of the college football schedule, but California kid got used to Wyoming, has gotten used to Buffalo, has got the strong arm. His receivers are big and physical and run good routes. So I do like Allen. It doesn't matter what the weather is. And again, if he has to take off and run, the Browns are terrible against the run as well. So he can support Devin Singletary this week. So Bills, you can't drop Josh Allen any lower than that, even though he's fallen in the MVP discussion in relation to Patrick Mahomes here of late. Jalen Hurts, it was tough, but he still managed the 3 touchdowns. He had one to Dallas Goedert early in the game. He had one on the ground. He had one to Devonta Smith late. So he still managed the 3 touchdowns. We like him to run a little bit more. The Colts defense is pretty tough. They don't allow too much for the air. So I think he might get it done a little bit more on the ground this week. The Eagles coming off their first loss, shockingly, there to the Commanders on Monday night. So I think Hurts is fine. He's locked and loaded. He has a high floor every week, but his ceiling might be a little bit limited in this particular matchup as the Colts don't give up much in the way of passing touchdowns with Stephon Gilmore on the back end and a pretty good pass rush as well. But they're vulnerable in the middle of the field. Shaquille Leonard was placed on IR with that back injury. Kwity Paye has been hurting here for the Colts as well. So there's enough there in the short to intermediate pass game. You'll have to do it without Dallas Goedert, however, who is on the shelf with a shoulder injury. So it's going to be a lot of A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Let's hope Brown is okay. He was in and out of the game, banged up. Smith had to go to the medical tent for a little while as well. So let's hope the wheels are not falling off the Eagles. But I think you look at No Leonard, that's going to help the running of Hurts and Miles Sanders this week. And again, throwing underneath, that's where Hurts is going to get it done. Joe Burrow comes back from the bye. He's at the Steelers. The Steelers are banged up in the secondary. It's going to be a lot better result than week 1. He did get it done with volume. It was a big turnover game. I know there's no Jamar Chase, but he's going to adjust and get it done with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon once again this week. Justin Herbert, I like. It's been disappointing here for the past several games. There's some promise that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams might do some practicing this week. That would be big news here in the right time to face Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. The volume should be pretty high for Herbert. He can still get a couple touchdowns, get to 300 yards in this one for sure with Mahomes on the other side. So Justin Herbert comes in at number 7 to me. I think he has a big rebound week. Dak Prescott, he had a couple interceptions in Green Bay, but still had the massive volume, the 2 touchdowns to CeeDee Lamb, one to Dalton Schultz. It's very familiar territory here. Vikings are pretty vulnerable, even with Patrick Peterson having the 2 interceptions. Keep in mind, Josh Allen still put up a really good fantasy game against the Vikings defense last week. So Dak gets it done here on the other side of Kirk Cousins. Daniel Jones, let's get to him. He's getting it done with anybody out there. It's amazing that he's got Darius Slayton, his old go-to guy. He's making it work with new tight ends. He did it early this season with Daniel Bellinger. Now he's doing it with Tanner Hudson. These other receivers, they just trot out there. We've seen Richie James early, just different guys getting it done here for the Giants by committee. And Jones can also run. The Lions just gave a big rushing game to Justin Fields. So Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, that combination at home can be devastating against a really bad defense, and the Lions qualify. So I love Daniel Jones this week. I think he can get you 2 through the air, good rushing yardage as well this week. Lions defense just a shell of itself, and we know what happened there against Fields last week. Even with the pick 6, Fields put up big numbers. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think he's going to have to put it up in the air. I like it against the Cardinals this week. You got George Kittle having a great matchup at tight end. Deebo Samuel working in the middle of the field. Their number 2 corner, Marco Wilson, is pretty weak. That's probably going to mean more good things for Jawan Jennings. And Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield catching passes. So I think the 49ers are going to put up a big scoring day in Mexico City against that Cardinals defense on Monday night. Aaron Rodgers at home against the Packers and against the Titans. He's not against the Packers. He's for the Packers. He's helping them now. All of a sudden, instead of hurting them, 3 touchdowns last week, playing off a run-heavy script. The Titans are tough against the run, but they could be a little bit more vulnerable if Jeffrey Simmons has to miss another game. He's been playing hurt, but actually had to miss the last couple games. So watch out for Aaron Rodgers going off again and again. You're going to have to pass quite a bit on the Titans because you cannot run on them consistently and effectively, and he's feeling it now. He's actually had 3 out of the last 4 weeks have been really good for Rodgers. The one game, go figure, was the Lions clunker where he had the 3 uncharacteristic red zone interceptions. Marcus Mariota, the total of this Bears game is 50 points, and the Falcons are actually favored by 3. That's an implied pretty high total here for the Falcons against the Bears. So Bears' offense is great, but the Bears' defense stinks here overall. Their secondary is worn down. The run defense is pretty bad. That all lines up well for Mariota to put up pretty good numbers opposite Fields. You have Russell Wilson this week. He's had one really big game. It came in a loss to the Raiders early this season, and that was the matchup that presents itself again here this week. Jerry Jeudy, we'll see about him and the ankle injury, but with Cortland Sutton and Greg Dulcich, he can put up the numbers there in this matchup that's tailor-made for their top wide receiver. And tight end and deeper leaguers, you can look at Kenny Pickett this week. Yep, Kenny Pickett getting it done with some running last week, 199 yards passing, didn't turn over the ball, had more than 50 yards rushing and a touchdown there. So the Bengals secondary without Chidobe Awuzie, pretty vulnerable, should see some volume also opposite Joe Burrow this week. So deep leagues, I do like Kenny Pickett quite a bit here. And once the schedule opened up a little bit, it's been great for Pickett, and I think his wide receivers will have some success as well as tight end Pat Freiermuth this week in the second matchup against the Bengals. All right, so there you have a look at your quarterback rankings and recommended starts. We'll get into the players that I would like to avoid playing at that position here in our next segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Before we do that, I got to tell you about Taro. Taro is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Taro, you can book any car that you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and coming soon to Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from point A to point B. Test drive that new electric vehicle that you've had your eye on and see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Taro hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive only at Taro.com. All right, we'll continue the show looking at our quarterbacks that we don't want to play this week in fantasy football in a moment. We'll do that for you. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's look at the quarterback sits before we get into our running back rankings of the week. Shall we do that? All right, Kyler Murray. He's got the hamstring issue. There's a lot of rumblings from the Phoenix area media that the Cardinals should stick with Colt McCoy as a starting quarterback. He played well, distributed the ball. He was healthy, did what a veteran backup usually does. But Murray was pretty close to playing last week. He had limited practice the last 2 days with the hamstring. He should be close. It is going to be a tough decision here for fantasy managers. I would just avoid it. With the hamstring, bad hammy, facing a very tough 49ers defense. He's not going to run around the way we expect. Just don't worry about Kyler Murray. Go in a different direction this week. I know he's been putting up the numbers, and in relation to other quarterbacks, he's well into the QB1, middle of range of that. But, man, it just hasn't been impressive, and I think you're going to get disappointing numbers if he does go and he doesn't run. That really curbs his numbers here. There's been some rumors that Marquise Hollywood-Brown could return, but I don't think that's going to quite happen. He did lose Zach Ertz, a pretty big weapon last week. So 49ers, again, pretty tough on quarterbacks in general with their pass rush. This Cardinals offensive line really beat up here as well. So I'm going to avoid Kyler Murray. Just go in a different direction. Don't try to even wait for Murray here. Maybe just pivot to Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I think that's the thing to do because Garoppolo is still available in a lot of leagues. can go there. If you really want to hold out for Murray, you can go there. But I would rather say I'm going to play Garoppolo in that game with all the weapons and how he can just kind of fall backward into points with those receiving weapons for the 49ers. Kirk Cousins. It was okay for Kirk Cousins in the end. Justin Jefferson kind of bailed him out with some great receiving there. It was a tough matchup against the Bills. Same thing with the Cowboys. Look, it was a run-heavy game plan for the Packers. They were able to get 3 touchdowns off that with Christian Watson. A bit fluky there, but this is going to be more of a Dalvin Cook game. That's how the Vikings kind of grinded a few field goals as well. So I don't see a big volume day for Kirk Cousins. I think he could get by with the touchdowns, but I think if I had some better options in the top 12 that I mentioned above, I would go in that direction this week. Derek Carr, no way. The Broncos defense, one thing that has not let them down, they did give up the 2 touchdowns last week, but they were a bit fluky off the big plays, Nick Westbrook-Ikine and the Titans last week. I'm just not trusting Derek Carr at all on the road against a very good pass defense. Jared Goff, no way. Not playing him against the Giants. Look, the numbers were underwhelming last week as well. I know he tried to grind, but couldn't get to 200 yards passing. This passing game has pretty much died because it's just the Amon-Ra St. Brown show. There's nothing else going on here. So the tight end's just not getting it done enough here without T.J. Hawkinson. So no Jared Goff. Taylor Heineke and Davis Mills in the same game. They might seem like a little bit of a mini shootout, but the Commanders' defense has played really well late. Keep in mind, they also contained Kirk Cousins just a couple weeks ago. They did a number on Aaron Rodgers. They needed plays from Aaron Jones to salvage that performance there. So the Commanders' defense playing a little bit better. Davis Mills is not playing well at all, home or away at this point. He's on the verge of being benched for former Commanders quarterback Kyle Allen. So not feeling with Davis Mills, not feeling with Taylor Heineke either because you beat the Texans on the ground. They're pretty good with their coverage scheme. With cover 2, they'll force Heineke to be patient there against Lovie Smith's scheme. So I'm guessing a lot of Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson Jr., much like we saw in Philadelphia to win the game here as the Commanders have actually won 4 of the past 5 games. That's how they win another one in Houston this week. All right, let's go over my running back rankings. These are the guys that we're going to no-brainерly start. And I will add an addendum here that David Montgomery's in this group, and we'll talk a little bit more about him or recommended starts. But there was a development there with Khalil Herbert with his hip injury going on injured reserve. So David Montgomery is somewhere, I will say, he's in the top 12 to 15 in this range as well. But we'll talk more in depth about him as a strong start in our final segment when we do the actual start of sit him with the borderline guys that you may have questions about. Saquon Barkley at home against the Lions, a big game against the Texans. He doesn't disappoint. He's a better home running back in general, so he's going to crush the Lions at home. Christian McCaffrey, the Cardinals are pretty weak against the inside receivers and the running game. So McCaffrey, I think, is going to get it done as a receiver and runner this week, and that's why I like Jimmy Garoppolo. Mexico City, they're going to have trouble stopping him there as McCaffrey does damage in another country this week. Austin Eckler is the lifeblood of the Chargers offense. He's a terrible matchup for the Chiefs because, again, he gets on the open field. He's a receiving back, so that's what the Chiefs struggle with most. So he's number 3 for me, rebounding from that little tough outing against the 49ers. Derrick Henry also comes back strong from that limited game against the Broncos. The Packers give up a lot in the running game. We know the Titans are not going to shy away from that. So Henry in a great spot. He's at number 4. Joe Mixon coming off that massive 5-touchdown game before the bye, gets the Steelers' weak run defense here on the road. So, and they're going to lean on him as much as they can without Jamar Chase. He's 5. Ramondre Stevenson returns in the smash spot against the Jets as they start to continue to fade Damian Harris here at home. I like that. Nick Chubb, tough matchup, but they should stick with the run quite a bit. The Bills are pretty vulnerable there. So Nick Chubb, not depending on his receiving value for there. So Nick Chubb comes in at number 7. Jonathan Taylor, very strong in the top 10, coming off that game against the Raiders. The Eagles' run defense has become leaky of late. They've allowed big games to Dameon Pierce and the Commanders' duo last week. So Jonathan Taylor, fully healthy, getting the ball quite a bit. No Naheem Hines as well to deal with anymore in the passing game, so Taylor will eat up that as well. So no matter what the game script is, Taylor will produce there against the Eagles at home. That's also good news for that matchup. Alvin Kamara, the Rams have struggled a little bit. They're allowing a little bit more to the running back. James Conner had a couple touchdowns last week for the Cardinals. So hopefully Kamara can return to the end zone, rebound a little bit. We'll see who the quarterback is. It's not going to help him if it's Jameis Winston. It's a few more checkdowns gone here for Kamara, but you still have to trust him. Dameon Pierce at home against the Commanders. I know they're pretty tough in the middle with Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, but Pierce gets it done with volume, even a tough matchup last week against the Giants. Negative game script. Pierce keeps producing. Now the new handcuff is probably Eno Benjamin. They picked him off the Cardinals waivers. So they were the first waiver party, so they jumped on him. So Pierce and Benjamin is probably going to be this running back combination going forward for the Texans. That's probably we've seen the last few games of Rex Burkhead. Dalvin Cook has to get the ball a lot. He's been sneakily dominant here and good of late with his running. He gets it done with touchdowns as well. At home against the Cowboys, Aaron Jones is the lifeblood of the Packers. And now if the Titans can slow down a little bit with their stout run defense, he can get it done as a receiver in this game. He's going to get the volume for sure. Josh Jacobs, Broncos have been vulnerable with the run at times. They did contain Derrick Henry, but Jacobs did go off against the Broncos at home in the first matchup. Tony Pollard, we'll see about Ezekiel. It doesn't matter. You're still going to play Pollard as a strong RB2 this week. Cordell Patterson, revenge game for him against a pretty weak Bears run defense this week. A former Bear at home, fast track, should at least get one touchdown, around 80 yards from scrimmage there in that matchup. And Miles Sanders, good matchup again. With no Shaquille Leonard, it really opens up the Colts run defense quite a bit. So he's the guy I like coming in also as a strong RB1 this week. And we'll go ahead and talk about David Montgomery now. I think he belongs right up here. Again, no Khalil Herbert. The Falcons are really bad against the run. We saw Donta Foreman go off. I think Justin Fields, that could hurt him a little bit, that he might actually give up some rushing yards to his compadre, Montgomery in the backfield. But Montgomery without Herbert, you'll see a little bit of a touches go to someone else. But I think when you look at it, that's a really great development here for Montgomery, kind of like what happened with Donta Foreman without Chuba Hubbard in the first matchup against the Falcons. If you can dominate the backfield, get 20-plus touches here, you're in great shape against Atlanta's defense. All right, we will get into the running back start sits there, the borderline question guys that you may have, and Montgomery no longer one of those guys this week. We'll do that in our final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Look, we're always looking to improve our team, no matter what business we're in, and LinkedIn Jobs wants to do that for you. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find that right combination of people for your team faster and for free. It's very easy to create a job on LinkedIn Jobs. You can do it in minutes, and you're going to be able to set it up the way that you want it. All you have to do then is add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. So really, whether the size of your business is growing or you're still small and you want to make sure that you have the right team in place and the next member to get you going there, LinkedIn Jobs are going to take care of you. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is rated #1 by small businesses in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football, we told you at the top, was brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sporting betting information, stats, news, and analysis. It doesn't matter what sport you're into. The NFL is coming down the stretch here in the regular season, headed to the playoffs, but we know NBA and NHL have just started here, getting going, and we know the World Cup is coming up as well, so a lot of opportunities there. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those too at BetOnline as well. BetOnline is always the fast and easy way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use a mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And really great time to get into it, as we said. NFL down the stretch. A lot of fun to get in on the action, as well as World Cup is going to be a lot of fun, folks. Just a little extra bonus here as we enjoy the NFL. November, December also going to be memorable with the other type of football in the mix. And you can check it out at BetOnline. All right, it is time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football and look at the running back start sit advice here. So Dave Montgomery ascended into a must start. Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson Jr. So Gibson, I'm going to definitely play the high-end RB2 this week. Scored against the Eagles. They went run heavy against that team. It really worked well. And why would you stop that formula against the Texans, the worst run defense in the NFL? I don't see that happening. So scheme and game plan and player and talent and matchup all aligning here. So Antonio Gibson, I love as an RB2 this week. And Brian Robinson Jr. is a very strong flex play. I think I trust Gibson to get a few more touches, but both those guys very playable this week. Once again, coming off a big game against that Eagles run defense. The forecast, again, we talked about potential 2 feet of snow coming down in Buffalo. That's going to be good for Devin Singletary against the Browns. Run defense has been terrible. We saw them get destroyed by Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. with speed. Singletary's got some juice as well. So Singletary coming off a 2-touchdown game at home. Everything lines up again for him in this matchup. They're also at home against the Browns, so love it. This offense will keep on point here, and I think the Bills are overdue for an explosion. The Browns, unfortunately, are going to be the whipping boys for that. Jamal Williams, he's the guy that you trust now. DeAndre Swift not getting enough snaps here. They're mixing in Justin Jackson a little bit, but Giants, the only real vulnerability there is their run defense, and that's the power run. They don't give a lot in the receiving game, so Jamal Williams should have success there. Gus Edwards, let's watch the practice status. Can he return from the hamstring injury? They were optimistic before the bye here. If not, it would be Kenny Drake, who's been the hot hand. Whoever's playing in there in the lead role, it's the Panthers this week. They can put up big numbers here. So Drake might be in for another big night here against the Panthers after ripping the Saints and a reeling run defense there in week 9 before the bye. Isaiah Pacheco, the Chargers, you can run on them. Pacheco's getting the volume. They've been phasing out Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Jerick McKinnon is more the receiving back, and they're a little bit better in that spot here. But Isaiah Pacheco, I think, gets into the end zone this week, playing off that high volume, excellent passing game with Patrick Mahomes. Melvin Gordon, I like this week. I know they have Chase Edmonds. I know they have Latavius Murray, but Melvin Gordon's still been the guy. He's familiar with the AFC West foes in particular. Get the Raiders at home this week, so they'll have a positive game script here, playing off Russ Wilson with Cortland Sutton and Greg Dulcich, even if Judy doesn't play. So I do like Gordon this week to bring it home for the Broncos who desperately need a win at home. Jaylen Warren, I like him quite a bit. I mean, 99 yards there for Najee Harris, but Warren was pretty impressive in the pass game, still showed a little bit more explosiveness, did a little bit more with less in terms of the average production per touch here. Warren has still brought that. It's pretty even in terms of how they use them. Harris is pretty much the power back. Warren is the change of pace guy with some receiving upside. So half point, full point PPR, I lean that way. The Bengals could get out to a lead here. That could mean a negative game script and positive things for Warren, unlike last week where the Steelers were quite in control against the Saints. I think they'll have to catch up a little bit on the Bengals this week. So I like that totally this week. Now, those are the plays that I do like at running back. Let's close on the downside, shall we, of the weaker starts at running back based on the matchups and other factors. D'Onta Foreman, this Ravens defense going to come back strong after the bye. They're pretty stout against the run. They'll have all their main guys up front healthy here. Negative game script also is my concern with Foreman, with Chuba Hubbard being a little bit healthier this week coming off the Thursday night game. So that can be more dump-offs than involved in the passing game for the back. So I cannot trust Foreman. James Conner, I do not like at all this week. I know we might want to chase the 2 touchdowns against the Rams, but 49ers are really tough against the run. They really did a number on Austin Eckler and really bottled him up last week. So I don't like Conner's chances here up front. I think the 49ers could also build a big lead. They could phase out Conner. You could see a little bit more of Keontae Ingram in this game. I don't know if we're going to see Kyler Murray or Colt McCoy. I want to avoid the Cardinals in general. So I feel great about Daniel Jones, that 2019 first rounder, and his backfield buddy, Saquon Barkley. I do not feel great at all about Murray and Conner this week. And Conner has had the injuries behind him, but we know he can get banged up again. And Murray just not looking good with the hamstring. If I'm going to like one Jaylen Warren, I don't like Najee Harris. I mean, it's a grind. I mean, he has to get a touchdown. That gives you a little bit more value than him just grinding out the rushing yards. But if Warren's going to come to the receiving work, I trust him a little bit more. Opposite to thinking on DeAndre Swift, the Giants don't allow much to backs in the passing game, so that'll be more of a Jamal Williams game. And Swift, you cannot trust with his injuries to get enough touches here. Michael Carter and James Robinson, not feeling them at New England this week. I think they'll be bottled up by that Patriots run defense coming off a bye. They're facing the Jets also coming off a bye. Kareem Hunt, he wanted out of there. It couldn't work out. He's just playing out the string here. He's not going to get enough touches to be playable against the Bills this week. Elijah Mitchell, again, don't chase the volume and workload from last week. I think that was by design because they wanted to go run heavy against the Chargers, so they had to preserve Christian McCaffrey a little bit. This week, a little bit more about the passing game weapons there for Garoppolo, including McCaffrey. So don't go that direction. I think Mitchell might have a bit of a cleanup role there if they pull away on the Cardinals, but I do not recommend Mitchell this week. Again, it's really hard for these backs that don't get involved in the passing game there, especially in half point and full point PPR. Like, it's a grind. You have to get to 80, 90 yards, and you got to get that score. And that score is not guaranteed with McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and others in the red zone as well. Damien Harris, you just can't go there against the Jets. I mean, this could be it for Damien Harris just being a backup here. You look at what you get from A.J. Dillon, still not enough. Again, got to get that running production and a touchdown. You're not getting that from Dillon, especially against that Titans stout run defense this week. Darrell Henderson Jr., look, it's between him and Kyron Williams and Cam Akers. Now you have John Wolford maybe starting again with Matthew Stafford in the concussion protocol. No Cooper Kupp. I just don't see this happening much. And the Rams, by the way, have a couple more offensive line injuries as if they needed any more. So pretty much awful here for the Rams to salvage anything. Maybe in deeper leagues, Allen Robinson is wide receiver 3 and Tyler Higbee is a back-end tight end 1, but that's about it at this stage, unfortunately, with Cooper Kupp going on IR with that ankle injury. And Tyler Algier, it was fun while it lasted, but they still love Patterson. It is a revenge game. Again, Arthur Smith for Patterson against the Bears. They also have Caleb Huntley getting involved. Algier, I don't see the volume being trustworthy enough to go with him this week. All right, so there you have it. There's a look at your running back ranking, starts and sits. We did that with the quarterbacks as well today's show as we presented our new version of Matchup Wednesday. Matchup Thursday, that means, is on deck, and that's our look at our wide receiver, tight end, defensive streamers, them in the rankings, as well as start sit advice at those positions. So excited to do that for you. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. Catch up on the biggest stories of the day in sports, plus get instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football on this podcast, this has been Vinnie Iyer. This has been our breakdown of the quarterbacks and running backs for Week 11. We'll come back tomorrow, wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses on Matchup Thursday.